For weeks, the golf world has been asking one question LIV Golf did not want to answer. Are Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm actually staying? On Wednesday, LIV Golf CEO Scott O'Neill finally stepped in front of the cameras to address it directly. And what came out of his mouth was not the confident, reassuring answer anyone expected. It was something far more telling. Because when a reporter asked O'Neill, point blank, how important it is to keep Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm to secure LIV Golf's future, he did not say yes. He did not confirm either man is staying. Instead, he pivoted, talked about stars in South Africa and Australia, and left the golf world with more questions than answers. In this video, we break down exactly what Scott O'Neill said, why golf insiders are calling it a dodge, and what his silence on DeChambeau and Rahm's futures really means for the two biggest names LIV Golf has ever signed. For more coverage in golf, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's set the stage, because the timing of this press conference could not have been more important. Bryson DeChambeau's current LIV Golf contract is set to expire at the end of this season. Jon Rahm, despite being one of the richest signings in the history of professional golf, has still not committed his long-term future to the league. Two of LIV Golf's most important stars, both sitting in genuine contract uncertainty, at the exact moment the league needed to project stability more than ever. So when Scott O'Neill walked out to face reporters on Wednesday, the golf world was watching closely, and for good reason. This was supposed to be a big moment for LIV Golf. O'Neill opened with what should have been the headline of the day, announcing that the league had successfully secured fresh investment heading into the 2027 season. On paper, that is exactly the kind of news LIV Golf desperately needed after months of speculation about its financial stability. But that announcement was not what golf fans ended up talking about. What they ended up talking about was what happened next. What a reporter pushed O'Neill on the one topic everyone actually wanted answered. How important is it to keep Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm around to secure this league's future? This was the moment. A direct, simple question about the two most important names LIV Golf has ever put its brand behind. A yes or no opportunity to settle months of speculation once and for all. If DeChambeau had quietly agreed to a new deal, this was O'Neill's chance to say so. If Rahm had privately reassured the league he was staying long-term, this was the moment to tell the world. Instead, what followed was one of the most talked about non-answers in recent golf memory. And the golf world noticed immediately. Because here is the thing about direct questions from reporters. The answer you give says almost as much as the answer you do not give. When an executive is handed the perfect opportunity to shut down speculation about his two biggest stars and chooses not to take it, that silence becomes the story. And that is exactly what happened here. What makes this moment even more significant is the broader context surrounding LIV Golf right now. This is a league that has spent this entire season fighting off questions about its own survival, doubts about whether its season-ending team championship will even happen, questions from rival tour players about whether new investors are making a smart bet, and now, right in the middle of all of that, a direct question about its two most bankable superstars that its own CEO could not answer with a simple confirmation. So what exactly did Scott O'Neill say when he had the chance to put all of this to rest? That is exactly what we are breaking down next, because his actual response is even more revealing than the fact that he avoided the question in the first place. Here is where it gets interesting, because Scott O'Neill did not stay silent. He gave a long, detailed answer. He just never actually answered the question he was asked. Instead of confirming whether DeChambeau or Rahm had committed to LIV Golf's future, O'Neill pivoted the conversation toward a completely different idea, the concept of what a star even means inside a global golf league. He pointed to moments from earlier in the season, describing how, in his eyes, there was no bigger star on the planet than Dean Burmester when LIV Golf was competing in South Africa, and no bigger star than Cam Smith when the league was in Australia. Think about what he was really doing there. He was redefining stardom on his own terms, suggesting that fame and importance in LIV Golf are relative to location, moment, and audience, rather than being tied to two specific global superstars. It was a clever answer. It was also, according to many watching closely, A very obvious way of avoiding the actual question in front of him. O'Neill did eventually circle back to DeChambeau and Rahm directly, and when he did, his praise for both men was genuine and generous. He made it clear he holds enormous respect for both players, calling them two of the biggest stars not just in golf, but in sports as a whole, and acknowledging that they carry more weight for this league than almost anyone else involved in it. He even said he would love for both of them to continue the journey with LIV Golf. But notice what was missing from all of that praise. Nowhere in his answer did O'Neill confirm that DeChambeau has re-signed. Nowhere did he confirm that Rahm has committed his long-term future. What he offered instead was admiration, followed by a broader point about the league having enough support from enough other players that it believes it will continue attracting the right stars regardless. Read between the lines on that final point, because it might be the most important sentence in his entire response. Scott O'Neill essentially suggested that LIV Golf believes it can succeed even if DeChambeau and Rahm are not part of that future. That is not the kind of message a league desperate to hold on to its two biggest superstars usually sends, unless it either genuinely believes it, or it is preparing the golf world for the possibility that one or both of them may not be there much longer. This is exactly why golf insiders and fans reacted the way they did. Had DeChambeau quietly locked in a new deal, O'Neill had every reason in the world to say so on the spot, especially right after delivering good news about fresh investment. Had Rahm made it clear behind the scenes that his future with LIV Golf was secure, this was the perfect stage to relay that reassurance to fans and investors alike. Neither of those things happened. What happened instead was a well-crafted answer that managed to praise two superstars without ever confirming they are staying. And that leaves the golf world exactly where it was before this press conference, except now with even more reason to believe something is genuinely unresolved behind the scenes. So what does this actually mean for Bryson DeChambeau specifically? That is where we turn next. For Bryson DeChambeau, this moment lands at the worst possible time. His current LIV Golf contract is winding down toward its expiration at the end of this season, which means every public comment about his future, or lack of one, carries extra weight right now. DeChambeau is not just another name on LIV Golf's roster. He is arguably the single most important asset the league has when it comes to reaching audiences outside of traditional golf fandom. His massive YouTube following, his willingness to turn golf into genuinely entertaining, shareable content, and his major championship credibility from his 2024 US Open win have made him the face LIV Golf leans on more than almost anyone else to prove this league belongs on the same stage as the sport's biggest names. Which is exactly why Scott O'Neill's failure to directly confirm DeChambeau's future should concern LIV Golf fans far more than it might on the surface. If the league had DeChambeau's commitment secured, there is no version of this press conference where O'Neill does not lead with that news. A CEO who just announced fresh investment for the 2027 season would have every incentive imaginable to follow that up by saying his biggest star is locked in too. Instead, DeChambeau's name only came up when a reporter forced the issue, and even then, the response stopped short of a real answer. This fits into a pattern that has been building for weeks. Insiders have already suggested that DeChambeau is one of the players least likely to remain with LIV Golf if the league cannot stabilize its long-term future, and Scott O'Neill's vague, redirected response does nothing to push back against that narrative. If anything, it reinforces it. When you have the chance to shut down speculation about your biggest star walking away, and instead you talk about how stardom means different things in different countries, you are not exactly sending a message of confidence. There is also a business reality here that cannot be ignored. Bryson DeChambeau's brand functions almost independently of LIV Golf. His content reaches millions of people who may never watch a full broadcast, and that kind of leverage means he does not need LIV Golf nearly as much as LIV Golf needs him. If his camp is even quietly exploring what life looks like after this contract expires, a response like O'Neill's does nothing to close that door. If anything, it leaves it wide open. None of this confirms that DeChambeau is leaving. He has not said that publicly, and neither has his team. But in a moment where LIV Golf had every opportunity to end the speculation with one simple confirmation, choosing instead to talk broadly about global stardom speaks volumes. And DeChambeau is not the only superstar whose future was left hanging in that press conference. Jon Rahm's situation is just as unresolved, and in some ways, even more complicated. If Bryson DeChambeau's contract situation is a slow-burning question, Jon Rahm's is the one that has hung over LIV Golf for even longer. Rahm has still not committed his long-term future to the league, and Scott O'Neill's press conference did nothing to change that reality. Remember what Rahm's signing meant when it happened. This was not just another player chasing guaranteed money. This was a reigning major champion, one of the most complete ball strikers in the world, walking away from the PGA Tour for what was reported to be one of the richest contracts in the history of the sport. LIV Golf treated that signing as validation, proof that this was a league capable of attracting players still at the very peak of their powers, not just stars looking for one final payday, which makes the lack of a clear answer about his future even more significant. When O'Neill was asked directly about the importance of keeping DeChambeau and Rahm around, this was his moment to say Rahm is committed, Rahm believes in this league, Rahm is not going anywhere. Instead, Rahm's name became part of a broader answer about global stardom and players from South Africa and Australia, before O'Neill eventually acknowledged both DeChambeau and Rahm carry immense weight for LIV Golf, without ever confirming either of them is staying. For Rahm specifically, that ambiguity matters even more because of what is at stake outside of LIV Golf entirely. His path back toward major championship contention, his standing in the world rankings, and his connection to the Ryder Cup as one of Europe's most important players all depend on decisions being made about his long-term future right now. Every month that passes without clarity is a month that keeps those bigger stakes hanging in the balance. Scott O'Neill's response, generous as it sounded on the surface, ultimately did nothing to resolve any of that. He praised Rahm's talent and importance to the sport, but he also made a point of saying LIV Golf believes it has enough support from enough other players to continue finding the right stars going forward. That is a telling thing to say directly after being asked about your two most valuable signings. It suggests a league preparing itself for the possibility that Rahm's commitment may not be guaranteed, even while publicly hoping it is. So where does that leave things? Neither DeChambeau nor Rahm has confirmed a departure. Neither has confirmed they are staying either. What we are left with is a CEO who had the perfect opportunity to end the speculation surrounding his two biggest stars, and instead delivered an answer that, according to many watching closely, only added to it. What that means for LIV Golf's bigger picture is exactly what we break down in our final chapter. Let's talk about what this actually means going forward, because a moment like this rarely stays contained to one press conference. Start with the investment news itself. Securing fresh funding heading into the 2027 season is genuinely important for LIV Golf, and it should not be dismissed. But fresh investment only matters if the league can prove to those new backers that its biggest stars are actually staying. Investors do not put money into a league hoping its two most recognizable superstars might walk away the moment their contracts expire. Scott O'Neill's inability to directly confirm DeChambeau and Rahm's futures, even while celebrating new financial backing, creates an awkward contradiction that LIV Golf will need to answer eventually, whether it wants to or not. Then there is the message this sends to the rest of the LIV Golf roster. Players who signed with this league did so partly because it presented itself as a serious, stable, well-funded competitor to the traditional tours. When the CEO cannot clearly confirm that even the league's two biggest stars are committed long-term, that uncertainty does not stay isolated to DeChambeau and Rahm. It spreads through a locker room full of players who are watching just as closely as the fans are. For DeChambeau, the coming months become even more important. Every tournament, every public comment, every hint about his future will now be scrutinized through the lens of this press conference. If he ends up leaving when his contract expires, this moment will be remembered as the point where LIV Golf's own leadership could not offer a real denial. If he stays, it will be remembered as a strange, unnecessarily vague moment in an otherwise positive announcement. The same is true for Rahm, arguably even more so. His long-term future carries implications far beyond LIV Golf itself, touching his major championship path, his world ranking, and his role for Europe on the biggest team stages in golf. A CEO's vague, redirected answer does not resolve any of that uncertainty. It only keeps the questions alive heading into an off-season that could end up reshaping this entire league. What we do know is this. Scott O'Neill had a direct, simple question in front of him, about the two players who matter most to LIV Golf's credibility, and he chose not to answer it directly. He talked about stars in South Africa and Australia instead of confirming Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm's futures. Whether that was a deliberate dodge or simply a CEO trying not to speak for two players who have not made their decisions yet, one thing is certain: this did not put the speculation to rest. If anything, it just gave it a new headline. For more coverage in golf, subscribe and hit the notification bell.